Hello Factorio fans, and welcome to part 2 of Let's Play Bob's Mods. In this video we are going to cover petroleum refining, electronic circuit or red board production, and blue tech. All three of these are pivotal and somewhat complex steps in the game, so let's dive in. Okay, you can put your petroleum refinery really anywhere that you would like. I'm going to do it over here to the left of my smelting area, and I'm going to use 3 lanes. One lane for the refineries themselves, the second for chemical plants, and the third for storage. I'll need to blast some of these cliffs to finish off that third lane, but I need sulfur from petroleum refining before I can do that. So let's create some storage here. Normally I like to do 3 tanks, but I'll do that for oil, but for the others I'll just use 1 right now because I'm a little squished. And I like to keep about 5 or 6 spaces in between these. Great. So here we'll have oil, petroleum gas, light oil, heavy oil, and sulfur. Oil up, so we can go ahead and attach this in. And there we go, we are accumulating our crude oil. One of the first things you'll have to decide as you set up your refinery is whether you want to train in crude oil or bring it by pipeline. I'm a big fan of pipelines just because once you get them set up you can pretty much leave them. And even though in this game my crude oil is all the way down here south, you can see I have created a pipeline that brings it all the way up to where I will have my refinery. Okay, I'm going to lay down 4 refineries. I find that that's usually enough. These can be upgraded to go faster. Leave 2 spaces in from the substations and at least 1 space in between each one so that we can get all of our pipes fit. This top one is my workhorse. It's going to produce kind of the standard crude oil processing. We use petroleum gas the most, and this gives you kind of the greatest output per crude oil input in terms of both gas and what can be converted to gas. So that's my first one. You have a choice at this point to make. You can either produce solid sulfur and belt it into your base, or you can produce sulfur dioxide and pipe it in. I'm a fan of the second method, so I'm going to go ahead and set these next 2 up to produce sulfur. And last but not least, I'm going to use one of these basic oil processing to just output petroleum gas. This is not particularly efficient, but it's kind of my peaker plant in instances when I need a lot of petroleum gas. So I can go ahead then and hook up crude oil, which I have brought over for that purpose. And I can go ahead and hook up water for those guys. Okay, on the output side, I want petroleum gas to be 2 pipes, light oil to be 3, heavy oil 4, and sulfur dioxide 5. That's going to leave me plenty of space to get some flow control things in here, which I will show you in a moment. Oops. Excellent. So I have brought in power. I have finished putting these pipes in place, and I have brought the respective outputs into these storage tanks. So we're up and running. I'm going to use some of these valves that come with the mod flow control to help me automate and regulate this refinery. You get 3 different kinds of valves with this mod. You get one that's just a straight valve that only allows things to go one direction. You get one that's an overflow valve, So that will only flow when the input is more than 80% full. We'll use this one for some of our chemical plants that will change light oil into gas. And then you get one that's called a top-up valve that will only allow fluid to flow when the output is less than 20% full. So in other words, if these tanks are getting low, it would kick in and start to let it go. I told you that this last plant I want to really kind of make it my peaker plant. So I really only want it to kick in when I'm running real low on this petroleum gas. So I put this valve in place, and what happens is, because this is, well, I have to wait until this gets to be 20% full, but when it does, it will fill up, as you can see it's doing here, and stop, which is what I want it to do. I want to do the same things with these two that are creating sulfur. So I'm going to put them here on the sulfur outputs, because when my sulfur gets full, I don't want these two to keep going. It's much more efficient to run this one and allow it to fill the other 3 tanks. Okay, last but not least, I am going to put down some chemical plants. And I'm going to put these right about here. I'll have one for lube and one for converting heavy into light oil. And I will come up here and do the same. Both of these will convert light oil into petroleum gas. I don't actually have the tech yet to do these advanced oil processing conversions, but that requires blue tech. So I'll get these set up and ready to go, but we'll have to wait until we discover the appropriate tech. But what's important here is how you set them up to be fed. So in this case, I'm going to bring 2 pipes down, and I'm going to bring this guy over directly here. And on the second branch, I am going to use one of these overflow valves that we talked about before. And the reason I do that is it basically will keep a certain amount, 80% of this tank full. But anytime it goes past 80%, it'll start to feed here. And that can then feed the chemical plant, which will convert it into light oil. Same thing here with light oil. I'll feed it in exactly the same way. In this case, we don't have anything that we want to feed it directly, so we'll just do it this way. And I know that these guys will eventually need water, so I will bring that across as well. To make red boards, we're going to need plastic. I make plastic on the far right side of my smelting area. Plastic is produced in a chemical plant from petroleum gas and chlorine. Guess we're making a chlorinated hydrocarbon like polyvinyl chloride or PVC, even though I don't think these types of plastics are commonly used in electronics, but hey, whatever. Technology has advanced. I actually think it would be a really interesting future enhancement for Bob's Mods to add a little complexity here. Maybe you'd have to crack various petrochemical byproducts into different monomers to make different plastics, but whatever. We are all armchair video game designers, aren't we? Okay, we've got petroleum gas coming over from our refinery, so we can go ahead and hook that up. But we're going to need to go ahead and make chlorine, so let's do that next. Chlorine is made through salt water electrolysis. So I'm going to put a couple of electrolyzers here, just to the left of the main bus. This is close to where we will eventually smelt aluminum, which will be useful, as you'll see. The process uses pure water and salt to produce hydrogen, chlorine, and sodium hydroxide. Sodium hydroxide is used in aluminum smelting, and it is also used to make blue tech. For now, I'm just going to go ahead and store that since I'm only interested in the chlorine. Good, so I can use this pure water that's coming in. To feed the process. I'm going to go ahead and put down a chemical furnace here to make my salt. I'm going to put that on the top of the belt. We just need to feed that with water. And here we go. I'm going to use this belt both for the input and the output. So I will use a filter inserter here to pick up only the sodium hydroxide to store. Great. I'm going to manually bring down the sodium hydroxide when we do actually start producing blue tech. I use robots eventually to do that for me. I don't find that transporting sodium hydroxide on the main bus is worth it, though if you have an especially large factory, you may want to reconsider that. Skipping forward just a bit, I've now brought petroleum gas and chlorine over here. As a side note, I talked in part one about the fluid control mod that I like. One of the nice things that it provides are these pipes that do not auto-merge. So if you want two straight pipes right next to each other, you can find those in your basic logistics menu right here. In any case, I've brought these up so we can go ahead and start up production here. And there we go, we're producing plastic. I have also brought my gas venting over here off to the side. I do this so that I can use a single gas venting pump for all of my excess hydrogen, and besides, if you're going to pass gas, you may as well do it off to the side somewhere. Great. Here is the formula for red boards. I've added lead smelting opposite the tin, so we now have everything we need to make the circuit boards and the solder, so let's start there. We will use the next branch below where we are making yellow boards, and let's start with resin. You can see that I have brought copper and tin in this top belt and wood and lead in the next belt. That'll be all the raw materials that we need. Resin is one of the few things that we can't make in an electronics assembling machine. We will need solder board for solder. I'm going to move this down just one to make it easier. And now we can produce our solder in an electronics assembler. Oops. We'll also need resin for phenolic boards, so let's go ahead and do those next. Phenolic boards, pretty straightforward, wood and resin. And we will put these two down. I find that 6 red board manufactories are enough for my game, but we can always expand off to the right. Let's go ahead and make the circuit boards right now. We're going to leave a space in between every other one to allow us to get the phenolic solution in. Unfortunately, anything that takes liquids cannot be made in an electronics assembling machine. Planning ahead is useful here. I find that making modules, those doodads that increase efficiency and speed, etc. for our factory, is useful to do right here to the right of red board production. This is because many of the inputs are exactly the same. So for example, resin and phenolic board are going to be used in module production as well, so I'm going to just extend those all the way over here. Similarly, we will eventually need some gold for our module production. We don't need that for red boards, but I'm going to extend a belt over for that. And then I'm going to bring these red boards over just like this. To eventually produce our red boards. I am going to need some solder as well. And then we can go ahead and lay down red board production. We still need our ferric chloride solution, so let's go ahead and produce that next. We can put it just to the right over here, and I'm going to create a connection for it to these manufactories. We will need a chemical plant to produce the actual solution, and then another one to produce the hydrogen chloride that we need. For now, I'm going to manually bring down some of the iron ore that we need. It really doesn't use that much, and so it should last a very long time. In fact, it'll probably last until I have robots and can automate that task. Okay, skipping forward just a bit, I've now brought hydrogen and chlorine down through my main bus and over here. We are now producing the ferric chloride solution, and I can go ahead and hook these up. And that then activates the circuit board production. Okay, we've got half of our inputs for red boards. Now we need basic electronic components and transistors. For the latter, we're going to need silicon plate. Silicon plate is made in an electrolyzer from quartz, carbon, and calcium chloride. I've brought quartz in here and put down a couple of electrolyzers and created a second belt for our other inputs. First one we can do fairly quickly, and that is carbon. That's simply coal. So I will put a chemical furnace down, go grab a little bit of coal from the main belt here. And bring in a bit of water. Calcium chloride is made from hydrogen chloride and limestone is made from stone. So, okay, let's take this a step at a time. Underneath these electrolyzers, where I'm producing my silicon, or will produce my silicon, I will set up for calcium chloride. I'm going to put these guys here and leave a bunch of extra room. Calcium chloride is used for a number of things, including titanium and tungsten later in the game, so we'll make sure we've got expandability here. And then 2, 3, we will produce a bit of limestone over here, also made in a chemical plant. I've brought some stone in for this purpose. Give these guys a bit of power. And we've got some limestone coming out. We will feed that to these guys, making calcium chloride. And below here, let's create some hydrogen chloride. Okay, skipping forward a bit, I have brought carbon dioxide out and taken it over to my gas passing area. I have brought the waste hydrogen back and looped it around, and we're in business. We are cranking out this calcium chloride. And as it moves up, we are starting to get our first silicon, which I'll then bring around to the main bus. Okay, skipping forward a bit, we now have silicon plate being produced and coming down the main bus here next to our plastic. We're ready to make our final 2 components for red boards. We've made basic electronic components before in part 1 to make yellow boards, so I'll use the magic of video editing to make them appear here. There we have it. Now we just need transistors. We will start by, well, first of all, leaving a little extra space here. And we'll start making our silicon wafer thin. And we're just going to need the tinned copper wire off of this one. And skipping forward a bit, we've got our transistors up and running. No real mystery here. Electronics assemblers, and takes plastic, silicon wafers, and tin copper wire, and off they come. We have all of our ingredients for these boards. Let's go ahead and hook up an inserter, 2 back, 1 forward to these guys. This last one's going to have a little difficulty with this. Woohoo! We got red boards. We are now finally ready to produce blue tech. Woohoo! I wish my little avatar could dance here. Okay, we're going to use the next branch just below gray tech. I've already plopped down some pipe and gear manufactories here, so now we're going to go ahead and make engines. I find that a 1-to-1 ratio between engine manufactories and your blue tech is about the right ratio. For now, I am just going to manually put some sodium hydroxide here. We will eventually have robots deliver it. Oops. And I have placed a chemical plant here to make our sulfur. That's it. Those are all the ingredients. Let's go ahead and produce some blue tech. There it is, our blue tech. Ta-da! This concludes part 2. In part 3, we'll cover nuclear power, blue boards, and purple and pink tech. I hope you will join me then.